All right, so we're going to jump, and yes, we'll come back to email again later on. So I'm going to jump back to HTTP. We've done virtual hosts, or we have talked about it. I don't know if you guys have done it. So let's talk about what we're going to do next with our web server. On our virtual host assignment, all we did is we set up, was it 3? I think it was 3 virtual hosts with 3 CNAMEs in bind, and those were, it was just static content. I said, okay, just go create an index page in var www HTML, whatever your directory was, and you just created some really basic static stuff. Well, I also want to look at for a second just the functionality of a web server that supports dynamic content. And so briefly, we'll look at how we can use Apache to support PHP. We're not going to do any PHP programming. I mean, you can if you want, if you like PHP, but PHP is one language for writing programs to generate web content. It uses a module of Apache. When the PHP file is requested, Apache hands the request off to this PHP module. The module runs the script and captures the output. The output is returned to the web client. That's the only slide I have here. That was really exciting. So what do we do, or how do we make this happen? There it is, right there. So on our web server, on my web server, we're going to install the required packages that I need. Now, I just looked, just to refresh our brain with commands, we can do a search through our apt package list by doing something like that. I'm just grabbing for the word Apache. Now, I will point out to you that there is a newer version of PHP than when these slides were taken. The newest one is 7.0, or 7.2, 7.2. Anyway, so you'll do something like this, but if you follow this slide exactly, you're going to error out because there's no 7.0 anymore. It's 7.2. But if you do this search, you'll be able to say, oh, there was some, at least that's what it was when I checked this morning, but maybe there's something different between now and tomorrow when you guys do yours. So we're going to install this libapache2 mod PHP, which is a module for Apache that allows us to do this dynamic content. Make sure you've added an A record or CNAME for this new PHP site. Okay, so I did that. I called mine Bouncy, and it's an alias for www. We should know how that works. I increment my serial number, I restart bind, I make sure that that resolves okay. Maybe I ping Bouncy, whatever, or do a dig test to see if it works. By the way, right here, at this point, if I type in bouncy.thegummibear.com, what will come up on a browser? Your default. If you have the default configured correctly, the default page will come up because we haven't done any virtual host for Bouncy. Okay, so I do a dig test. Yay, everything looks like it's coming back. I'll go create a virtual host just like we did in the virtual host assignment. So I'll go into sites available, make sure it ends with .conf. I will put this in. I created that. Everything looks just the same as a normal virtual host that we've done previously. Create the document root. So I made the directory. Enable the virtual host. We've done all this. Apache 2 reload, A2 inside to enable that website and reload Apache. And then the only real thing here is I need to enable some, or create some content that we can test PHP stuff. So that's still not PHP, that's just static HTML. And yay, it loads. So all that stuff that we've showed up until this point is exactly the same as our virtual host, or our what we call vhost assignment. With the exception of installing PHP, libapache2 mod PHP a second ago. Okay, so here is an example PHP script. is generally you put PHP in the body of your, well, inside of your HTML tags, we're going to say for now. And you don't really need to understand this. I'm not going to teach PHP. I have taught a PHP class before, but anyway. This just says, hey, let's do an unordered list tag, and then inside of this, we're going to create 10. This is a loop that does 10 list items, and then we close our unordered list. And I call it simple underscore app.php. When I run it, it does that. That's what it renders. So it's a dynamic language because this is not HTML. This has to go rerun every time the page loads in order to generate content. So there's an example. Here's another example. This is of testing to see if PHP is working. So you can just put inside of your PHP tags, which are indicated by that less than question mark, the word PHP info, open close parenthesis, semicolon. So that's just a call to a pre-written PHP function that generates this. Yay, I was able to test if PHP is working. Good. A final example is, here's just a PHP tag with some PHP function that I've called that basically prints out something like this, a timestamp. So nothing too complicated. So I have 3 apps that I've created. You saw 1, 2, and 3. They're all very simple. Don't need to do any PHP coding. You're welcome to go, grab other PHP code. You don't have to use mine, but you're welcome to if you want to. This is the tricky part. This is where you actually have to do some HTML coding, but I think you guys can do it. Index.html. Oh, you do something like that?
Oh, it was so hard.
Some A tags. So now this is slightly different than what I'm going to ask you to do on the assignment. But we have an index page that has a link to it's called simple, and it goes over to simple app. I click on it. I don't know if oh yeah. So if I click on it, it will load up that first one that I wrote. If I click on the other one, it loads up the second one. I don't think what is it? Web 1300? Is that where you guys might learn this? Web 1400?
1400, yeah.
And this is not, it's not a prereq for this class. So if you're getting stressed out about HTML, don't. You can figure that out. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find some random PHP application on the internet and install it. That will be on your assignment too. But don't install some, we don't want anything offensive. So I just went and found, and I know PHP scripts can become very complicated, and we don't want them. I don't not looking for anything complicated. I found this tic-tac-toe in PHP. I didn't even know what it was, so I just copied it, pasted it into a new file here. Didn't look through any of it, and then I loaded it up, and it worked, and good enough. I was able to play tic-tac-toe. Yay, yay, yay. I didn't win. Okay. So let's look at the assignment. I mean, that's really what we need to do. So for HTTP server scripting assignment, install PHP, create 3 more virtual websites on your web server. On vhost assignment, you created 3. On this assignment, you're going to create 3 additional ones, following the same process, adding CNAMEs, adding virtual hosts, those 3 new virtual hosts, adding 3 new document roots, and putting PHP content in each of the 3 document roots. So install a simple PHP file that tests the functionality of PHP on each of those. On each of these 3 new virtual websites, update the index document to include a link to the PHP test file. This is the one that's unique from my screenshot, where we looked at HTML. Remember on my index page I had 3 links? How many links will you have on your assignment?
4. Just 1.
1 link. You're going to have 3 index pages, 1 for the first website you create, 1 for the second, 1 for the third. So you have 3 index pages, but those index pages will only have a single link on each one. Each of these new indexes must include a unique word. Each of the 3 PHP testing scripts must also include the same unique word. So if I created bouncy or whatever,